Hello, I'm Samuel Jardine, a research analyst with London Politica. Welcome to part 3 of my series, Rising Tensions in a Melting Arctic. Today we're going to look at the actual factors driving tensions between powers as of right now. The first is predominantly distrust between great powers. Despite the efforts of the Arctic Council, new arrivals to the region like China, and the shift towards more active policies regarding the Arctic from bordering states, particularly Russia and the US, have created a new political environment which peers may not fully understand or appreciate. This is not helped by the Arctic Council's current mandate specifically excluding security matters. So the key regional forum lacks the scope to tackle all the modern Arctic problems brought about by climate change. This is an issue. The Arctic Institute has highlighted that the biggest risk for an outbreak of conflict in the Arctic comes from the sheer increase in military assets being deployed by all powers to protect their perceived interests. This means there is ever greater scope for miscalculation, as an accident or poor judgment call from those on the ground could spark a crisis, exacerbated by the lack of open dialogue and trust. There are instances already happening that justify this fear. A British official leaks that Russian submarines have, in their words and from a UK perspective, swarmed into the region and are aggressively intercepting British submarine patrols in a manner not previously seen. This has ramped up British concerns, and NATO's Norfolk commander has gone on record to state that currently there is a fourth battle for the Atlantic underway, with the Arctic included. This geographical fluidity leads into my next key risk factor driving tensions: spillover. The Arctic, far from being as previously deemed by experts even as recently as 2014 excluded from geopolitical competition, has been integrated into global power politics as climate change facilitates its growing economic potential at a time of rekindled great power competition. The Arctic's newfound connectivity, then, is a double-edged sword. This was neatly articulated when Britain's first Sea Lord in 2020 warned that easing Arctic conditions would allow China's rapidly expanding navy to begin to operate for the first time on Europe's doorstep in the very near future. The emphasis here is that tensions then between Britain or other European states and China in, say, the South China Sea can and will spill over courtesy of the Arctic acting as a new maritime highway. Officials in Europe then will need to readjust their security horizons and consider that a display of force in Asia may now be met with an equivalent Chinese demonstration near their own waters. The spillover, of course, is a two-way street. The revitalised great power competition we've been seeing over the last few years is using the Arctic itself as an arena, as up-and-coming powers flex their influence in a region traditionally considered a backyard by Arctic states. For instance, Greenland, whose US-owned fuel base forms a key link in missile and early warning defence systems, was courted by China in 2018 as a site for a large heavy freight airport. Greenland is an autonomous territory in the Kingdom of Denmark. It is a growing independence movement and is rich in strategically important natural resources. The Chinese airport would have been a great boon for the area as transport links are limited, and for China it was part of highlighting just how expansive their interests are in the Arctic. It was an advertisement. It would also help Beijing make inroads into a state that has a lot of further economic opportunities strategically, and that in the near future may seek to forge its own path diplomatically. This, however, is an area the US deems its backyard and integral to its defence. The US came down heavily on the idea and strong-armed Denmark into blocking the plan and offering its own alternative, with US Defence Secretary Jim Mattis reportedly stating to his Danish counterpart that Beijing must not be allowed to militarise this stretch of the Arctic. It was arguably this incident that re-spurred the USA's interest in the Arctic, seen with their increased military deployment and plans to expand their icebreaker capability as the deteriorating relations with China elsewhere in the world are brought to the fore in the Arctic. There is then great power competition and distrust at play, as each state is pursuing its own interests in the Arctic and coming into conflict for a lack of concern or appreciation for their counterparts' own conceptions. The same great power competition is partly why we're also seeing India recently release its own Arctic policy, because its main rival China is increasingly interested and India feels it cannot afford to be left behind. So the Arctic for the 21st century is going to be a very interesting and busy place full of economic and political opportunity. Exploitation of a melting Arctic does not have to be detrimental to climate change. In fact, shorter shipping routes can be advantageous to meeting climate targets. But security risks are present now too, and will only grow as the region becomes an arena of great power competition, with ever more actors staking out their interests in the area. The region needs to be carefully managed by governments, and there are big questions whether the existing Arctic Council system as a forum for Arctic powers and interested parties is capable of being the pressure valve it needs to be to ease the mistrust and growing tensions among powers.